5 offensive players, Leger Duzable and Brady Quinn providing those. You see, I mean, look at you got the top 4, all the same. Mahomes, Hurts, Travis Kelce, A.J. Brown, even in the same order between the two gentlemen. But where they differ is on the running backs. Leger likes Isaiah Pacheco, Brady all in on Miles Sanders. All right, so let's welcome in Brady Quinn and Leger Duzable, who are here to talk about their offensive players as well. We're going to get into the defensive guys as well. But Brady, I mean, let's start at the top. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes, what's the difference at this point in time when you look at their both respective seasons, both coming in on very good seasons between him and Jalen Hurts? What gives Mahomes a little bit of a nod ahead?
Well, I mean, look, it's not a nod ahead. I mean, look, he's light years ahead. We're already donning him, putting a gold jacket on him. And I think when you look at him, look, he's the best player in the NFL. You know, when you factor in the quarterback position, the premium that comes along with that, I think the thing that's impressed me so much about him in particular is, you know, there's the flashiness of the no-look passes. There's the escapability. We saw his toughness and grit. But what you've seen him do and develop over the course of this season is without Tyreek Hill, he's really done a better job of taking what the defense gives him. Not trying to force stuff, not trying to extend plays and try to find something downfield when you have a guy who's that big of a disruptive playmaker. It hasn't been quite the same. It's been more by design, and I think he's actually evolved more as a pocket passer in going through his reads progressions, distributing the football around, making it tougher to defend that entire offense as a whole. So he's been incredibly impressive this year. He will be the league MVP, and if they win, you better believe he's going to be the NFL, or excuse me, the Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah. To me, if you look at it, Patrick Mahomes is an alien, like you talked about. I mean, Jalen Hurts, I think the one question mark going into this season for the Eagles was, could he take them to the next level? And I think he's done a really good job. But Patrick Mahomes, you talked about it, people are already putting a gold jacket on him. And this guy's only played 5 years in the NFL. And the grit, determination we saw in the AFC Championship game, I'm talking about Brady, one ankle out there. And you talked about it, right? His development from not just going off platform, winning in the pocket and knowing where to go with the ball, you know, more meticulous with the football instead of just trying to find something down the field. He's getting everybody involved. He threw the ball to 10 different receivers in the AFC Championship game with 3 of his top receivers out. So, I mean, if you look at what Patrick Mahomes has done, he's on a different light year. Not to say that Jalen Hurts isn't having a heck of a season. He was my MVP favorite before getting the shoulder injury a few weeks ago versus Chicago Bears, but we just haven't seen that ascension from Jalen Hurts since he's come back from the shoulder injury as far as throwing the ball down the field.
And look, to answer your question, this presents an opportunity for Jalen Hurts to put himself into that conversation of maybe one of those young, bright, budding stars. But the hard thing is you've got the most talented team taking on the best player and most talented player in the NFL, and that's kind of more the storylines that comes with it. When you got 17 guys who are part of a roster, either as a starter or a Pro Bowl alternate, it's hard not to look at all the pieces around Jalen Hurts too and say he's a product of some of the parts. As good as he's played this year, and I'm with you, I think he was up for that MVP conversation. Mm-hmm. This is still one of the most talented teams too, but he's got the opportunity now to steer this ship towards a Super Bowl, and that's the challenge, I think, for Jalen Hurts is it's not necessarily feeling like he has to do everything, but being able to do what's required of him just to get the win.
And as we've mentioned before, I mean, this is a guy who had question marks about his, you know, him being a QB1 in this league coming into the season. He certainly has silenced all of that. So let's talk about the running backs, though, Leger. I wanted to ask you, what was the difference between Pacheco and Sanders for you, especially considering that Sanders is playing behind what is, you know, by a large consensus, the best offensive line?
Well, to me, if you look at it, because of Patrick Mahomes and the mobility and because the injuries and we don't know where the receivers will stand going into game day and Super Bowl, we know McCole Hardman most likely is out this game. So you're already talking about being down one receiver. If you look at this Eagles defense, to Brady's point, it's probably the most complete team in the NFL. Where they've struggled on defense is against physical running backs. We saw Dameon Pierce earlier this year versus the Houston Texans have a really good game. Christian McCaffrey in the NFC Championship game, even though they were down to their 4th quarterback, and then he played quarterback, right, still averaged over 5.5 yards a carry. And one thing that has really plagued this defense is missed tackles. We saw that on the 23-yard touchdown run by Christian McCaffrey. There's few backs in this league that are more physical than Isaiah Pacheco. And then when he can't put an imprint in the run game, we saw last week, catching the ball out of the backfield was big. He went almost 60 yards coming out of the backfield on a couple screens, couple check down plays. I think with Mahomes still not being 100%, he's going to have to pay a major factor for them to get this win.
I'm right there with you. I think he could be one of those guys if you're looking for maybe a little value and who else could be a Super Bowl MVP. It could be Pacheco, and it's not to take anything away from what Patrick Mahomes has accomplished in his career. He hasn't played that great in the Super Bowl wins. So Pacheco's a guy that I think when you think about that pass rush, right? The Eagles were, 3rd in NFL history this past regular season with all these sacks. That's going to be a guy you dump down to. That's going to be a guy that's going to be involved in the screen game, try to slow down that pass rush of the Eagles. I think he's going to have an incredibly pivotal role in game planning for the Eagles. But I went to the other side with Miles Sanders just because of more of the production this year. And I think also if you're looking at how these two teams match up, you got to be thinking if you're Nick Sirianni and you're Shane Steichen, you want to play a little keep away. I mean, not that you're scared of going up against and going toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs' offense. You've got playmakers too, but you'd like to have some balance. And as you said, Jeremy, this is the #1 offensive line. I want to physically control the game. I want to run with Miles Sanders. I want to make sure I incorporate Jalen Hurts as part of it, even with the hurt shoulder.
Yeah.
I think he's got enough time now to kind of heal up a little bit. But Miles Sanders is going to play, I think, a pivotal role in how Philly goes about controlling this game at the line of scrimmage.
In terms of your top 5 defensive players, you both submitted top 5 defensive players. Well, a lot of differentiation here, but one area where you didn't differ is you both have your top 2 guys, Chris Jones and Haason Reddick, Leger.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are obvious, right? If you look at Haason Reddick, I think he felt a way that he wasn't a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year, and he showed it through the first 2 playoff games, right? 1.5 sacks in the divisional round versus the Giants, and then was unblockable versus San Francisco 49ers. Coordinators, stop putting the tight end on an edge rusher. It just does not bode well. But what he's added as far as the element of being able to be like a Sam backer, but then also giving you that 5 down front where everybody has to go one-on-one with you, it's hard because it's like you have to almost chip to the side, but then you got 3 or 4 other good rushers. So who do you block? And I think that's the issue Haason Reddick brings it in. Chris Jones, I mean, last week or in the AFC Championship game, I believe it was his first sack in the playoffs in 14 games. Yeah. And when they needed him to be big on 3rd and 5, right, to get the ball back to Patrick Mahomes to win the game, they put him on the edge versus the energy. He won and got in the backfield. So obviously Chris Jones, I think, has to have a monstrous game this game, not only in the pass game, but as far as stopping the run. We know, you just talked about it, Miles Sanders in the production, Jalen Hurts over 700 yards rushing. Like the production from the run game and the physicality in the run game from the Eagles, Chris Jones is going to have to be a man amongst boys for them to have a chance to win this game.
It kind of reminds me of like the Aaron Donald impact, what he had in last year's Super Bowl for the Rams. Chris Jones, who's kind of taken over with Donald getting hurt this year, of like that top interior defensive player. But they make it so hard to be able to kind of get a beat on where he's at because the way you talked about how they move him around. And Frank Clark's played phenomenal in the playoffs, but a lot of that's been a byproduct of Chris Jones, I think, the attention that he gets. So, if you looked at my list, and I didn't know we were going to be working together, but I almost said all defensive linemen on here. When you look at the Eagles, I mean, they've been so good this year. Yeah. You had to have Haason Reddick. Javon Hargrave has played phenomenal. I left off Fletcher Cox. I felt bad about doing it because he's an impactful player in all this. I included Darius Slay because he had a Pro Bowl caliber season. He will play a factor in this one, I think, when you look at their secondary as a whole. But to me, this is all about the trenches. I mean, that's what this game is all about. I've been saying it for about a week now. It has the feeling a little bit of the Tampa Bay Bucks up against the Chiefs in Tampa. And you saw Patrick Mahomes run around for his life. I kind of get that feeling. I know the offensive line play is much better for Kansas City now. They're healthier there. But Mahomes isn't quite as healthy. I don't think he'll be 100% for this game. So I just think that defensive front for Philly is going to dominate a lot of what happens in this game.
And to your point, right, that's why I put Colin Saunders on mine, right? Because let's not forget in the NFC Championship game, those defensive tackles from San Francisco got embarrassed. Like guys were getting knocked out of the gap that all 3 of us could have skipped into the end zone for a touchdown. So Colin Sanders is going to be big. And you know this, Brady, in the RPO game, right, for those linebackers to be able to take their time and not just commit to the run, that defensive tackle has to keep, Jason Kelce, Landon Dickerson at the line of scrimmage without holding him. And Colin Sanders does a really good job. He did that last week in the AFC Championship game versus the Bengals because coming into that game, the Bengals really ran the ball well. Yeah. But because of Colin Saunders and also Chris Jones, they did a really good job being able to free up Willie Gay and Nick Bolton. That way they could take their time as far as getting downhill. He's going to be massive this game in that RPO game.
Brady, you mentioned Darius Slay as your top cornerback. You have C.J. Gardner-Johnson. What is it about him that you like in terms of this game?
I mean, can anybody stop Travis Kelce? Now, again, he's not going to be on him the whole game, but he's going to be a big proponent of trying to slow him down. And if you're defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, we saw him put him on, George Kittle a little bit in that game early on before Brock Purdy got hurt, and he played really well. But C.J. Gardner-Johnson, let's not forget, this dude probably would have been a Pro Bowler if he didn't get hurt. 6 interceptions, a ball hawk. They task him on being on tight ends. They really add him in the run game. He inserts in the run game. And then sometimes they even blitz him. So I think he's a chess piece that also has the flexibility to go into the slot. Because let's not forget, Maddox was hurt for a good portion of the second half of the season. They moved him back into the slot where he was comfortable, where he played with the New Orleans Saints. So that's a chess piece if you're Jonathan Gannon. You can move around. I think he's going to have a big role in this defense.
I got to point out, Trent, McDuffie, because you've got a rookie in there.
Yeah, that's why I put him on there.
He has played phenomenal as a nickelback for KC. Man, that's a young secondary. I think when you look at how these two teams stack up, it's going to be tough trying to hold down A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and all the different playmakers that Philly has. When you're talking about you're starting one and Watson on one side, you got Cook back there too in the secondary. Who's a rookie. You got McDuffie. You've got Williams back there as well as a backup, depending on Snead's health. I mean, there's a lot of youth back there.
A lot of youth.
It's a great matchups across the field, which we'll, of course, be breaking down all week long. Brady Quinn, Leger Douzable kicking off Super Bowl week for us by giving us their top 5 offensive and defensive players ahead of the big game. And with that, you want to keep it locked here on HQ. Super Bowl 57 coverage all week long. Oh, look at Amanda getting the money shot there. On top of interviews and breakdowns, we'll have our Sportsline guys with their plays all week long. And, of course, Amanda and company live from Phoenix. Keep it here, locked on HQ, as always.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.